You want to check Ms. Sands?
Here, I can check. Yep. I did, because I didn't want it to make all the banging noises. There you go. Green, let's go.
So, you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
You can put that in your pocket if you want.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we had a long day yesterday, and we talked about a lot of the issues that would possibly come up, and they're going to come up today in terms of the story that the Commonwealth just told you, and what I think you should be looking out for in terms of the evidence. There's some interesting things that, in order to assess, first of all, what they're saying, and second of all, the evidence that's going to be before you, is you have to look at certain timelines. So the murder of Christine Banfield by Joe Ryan occurred on February 24th, 2023. The arrest of Juliana Perez Magalhaes took place in October of 2023. She was held for nearly another year before she made the statements that are the full and complete support of what the Commonwealth just told you. And she did that because the Commonwealth decided that they were going to give her something certain. They were going to give her a plea of guilty to a manslaughter, which is a lesser included offense, and guaranteed time served upon her testimony here today or tomorrow or whenever that testimony is. You're going to hear a timeline of events and evidence that you'll have an opportunity to look at, where she was arrested in October of 2023, and the whole reason she was arrested was to flip her against my client. You'll hear that evidence from someone other than her and other than me. And they tried, and they tried. In a correspondence that she wrote to my client on January 1st, that was given to him, she says, they want you. All they want is to get you in this case. They want me to say things that aren't true. They want me to say things that I did that aren't true. They offered me a misdemeanor. She declined a misdemeanor, facing second-degree murder at the time. And then as the case went on, it became very clear that they wanted him so badly that they were willing to do anything. They made offers, not as good as a misdemeanor, but as time went on, for a manslaughter, suspended time, but she had to testify against Brendan. You'll hear there were at least 4 or 5 times during that year leading up to Brendan Banfield being charged, where they came to her, they went through her attorney, and they offered that deal that she now stands to have taken. Now, why is it that she wouldn't have taken that then? Well, we heard in the first instance, she said, they're asking me to say something that isn't true. And so let's look at another timeline that I think is appropriate. After she was arrested, she had a preliminary hearing in April of 2024. And you'll see communications that show real anxiety in terms of what was going to happen. After the preliminary hearing, then the first trial is set for July of 2024. Her attorney continues the case against her will. There's correspondence that says, I wanted to go forward. I wanted to show my innocence. Continued it to October, I believe. No, to November 12th. During that point in time, she'd lost trust in her attorney. She lost hope because he was the only person for someone who was thousands of miles away from her home, from her family, from the people that supported her. She lost hope in the person who was there to represent her. Whether that's true, whether that's right or not, I don't know. But what you'll see in this timeline that I'm going to create for you through evidence is that she was upset, and she said at one point, "I can't believe he continued this case. I didn't want that, I don't want that, I just want to go forward. He better not do that again." We go through a period of time into September. The stress and the anxiety starts to really ramp up for her. Approaching her November 12th court date. My client gets arrested. In her mind, she loses even more hope because he was the person who was on the outside who she really was depending on. They had an affair. You're not going to get any disputes from us. But he played a role, a supportive role to her while she was in jail, while they tried to do their little experiment on what would she take in order to come forward and tell a story. You'll hear in October, she went for emergency surgery, had a gallbladder surgery, spent 2 weeks in the hospital. And soon after she got out, she received word that her attorney was going to continue the case again because he needed to get a digital forensics examiner in order to review the evidence. That hadn't been done up until that point. That was the last straw. Whatever deals that had been rejected, the most recent time was September 30th. Whatever deals had been rejected, she was in for now. One of the deals was suggested by her attorney after he was upset with her, after she was upset with him in July. They get together, they arrive at this, and they have a recording of the questions that they're asking her during what they call the recant. You're going to hear some of those recordings. Now, any of you who have any sort of investigative roles in anything that you do, when you're talking to someone who's deciding to flip, you don't just take their word for it, you challenge them. Investigators challenge the statements that are being made. And so October 25th marks the first day that statements were made. Many of you may have seen that because it's showing up on media. And you hear someone asking her questions and then she answers those questions. Well, what we're going to be able to show you is that those answers are wrong based upon other evidence that we have in this case. But no one ever challenged her, no one ever questioned her. And so in order to have this narrative and this story that you received, Juliana Perez Magalhães is at the center of all of it. She's going to talk about where the gun was at one point, and then I think in the next recant she says it was a different situation with the gun. She said she ran into the bedroom and used the combination on the safe to get the gun, and then she had it been given to him by, or it was given to him by Brendan Banfield. I'm sorry, given to her by Brendan Banfield. You're going to hear there are significant differences in many of the things that she's providing to the Commonwealth, some of which are changing even up to most recent prep sessions, which we had access to, of December 30th. So the question will be, what's the final statement? I think we're all going to get that. But you're also going to see what she's done all along the way. Now, the Commonwealth used her for their case. I understand the situation that she's in, and I understand the fact that she's away from home and she's young and she's dependent on people, and she's also depending on the Commonwealth. And they've put her in this situation. And she's accepted it gladly, and I'm sorry to say, many people would. But it's the devastation that causes when you ask for that kind of testimony to be included in your case. Now let's just talk a little bit. Here, I may just get a sip of water. Sorry, a little dry mouth. Let's just talk a little bit about some of the other things that are going on in this case. And I think you'll find this through the evidence. So what essentially, and you may have heard it in media, is there's a theory called catfishing. And catfishing, for those who don't know it, and people more experienced and more expert than I will be able to tell you specifically, essentially is assuming the devices of someone in order to get something done, is the easy quick. There's probably more sophisticated explanation for it. But what they're saying is Brendan Banfield assumed his wife's devices, his computer, her phone, any other devices, in order to take on take on her persona in order to invite this gentleman, Joe Ryan, in. Catfishing is a theory that requires a conclusion that Christine Banfield gave up her devices. The Commonwealth's experts have concluded from the moment that the devices were examined and extracted that she did not give up her devices. And so then started the turmoil within the police department that I think is going to come out here. I doubt it'll be in the Commonwealth's case. But there were people within the command staff who were trying to change what the experts said about Christine Banfield's devices. They were trying to say that Christine Banfield did give up these devices or was away when those devices were being used. You're going to have a conclusion that was from the very early moments that she had not given that up. Now that's significant because all of the things that Juliana Perez Magalhaes has talked to you about is inextricably intertwined with catfishing. And so you're going to hear evidence from their expert witness. You're going to hear evidence from an expert witness that I have that concurs in their expert witness's findings. And in the world of digital forensics, there's a saying, digital forensics doesn't lie. People lie. And there are going to be plenty to see. You're going to see manipulation within the police department where if those that wanted the catfishing theory, if the line homicide prosecutors, homicide detectives didn't agree with this theory, they were transferred. When this case started, there were 12 people in the homicide squad. As this case goes to trial now, there's only 4 of those 12 there. Important ones that were removed in part because they didn't agree with the people that peddled the catfish theory, the lead homicide detective, the digital forensics detective. And this was back in late 2024. I don't know how many of you are familiar with criminal prosecutions and investigations. I was a prosecutor myself here in Fairfax. I've never experienced a homicide investigation where the lead homicide detective was moved prior to a trial. Digital forensics, I probably aged out of digital forensics, but that's a very important aspect of this. So I couldn't say personally whether that would have happened back in my day, but there are factors here that I think that haven't been brought forth by the Commonwealth. And in my efforts at presenting evidence, I'm going to be trying to bring that to light. As I indicated, there are serious timelines. There's a vulnerable person who's open to pray for what it is that they need. And I would respectfully suggest that Juliana Perez Magalhaes is the linchpin to all of that. Now, ultimately, it's the evidence. It's not what I say. It's not what the Commonwealth says. But I say these things to you so that your ear is ready, because you're going to see a presentation of a horrible, tragic, awful event for everyone involved. And there's no disputing that. And as I said earlier, we're not disputing, you won't hear any dispute as to the relationship between Brendan Banfield and Juliana Perez Magalhaes. But there's an awful lot more to look for, ladies and gentlemen, and that's what I'm asking you to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Carey. All right, your first witness, Ms. Sands.
Judge, is going to be Alicia Dale.
Thank you, Ms. Brisler.
Okay. Your Honor, we had